Hi, and welcome to Midnight, the night before this project is due. On August 28, 1963, the march took place. Around 250,000 citizens joined forces to stand up for inequalities that millions of African Americans faced every single day. This is definitely one of the biggest triumphs in literally history because even Martin Luther King Jr. said,
I think this march will go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, demonstrations for freedom and human dignity ever held in the United States.
But don't just take his word for it. Let's talk about what happened at the march, starting from the beginning. In 1941, A. Philip Randolph first orchestrated the March for Freedoms, but right before the march took place, FDR set in place a law that forbid any racial discrimination against workers. So, in return, it caused Randolph to cancel the march. But sadly, years later, the Congress stopped funding this order, which left Americans back at square one. In the mid-1950s, Randolph started to put together another mass march, this time bringing in Martin Luther King Jr. and the NAACP. This time, the march took less than 3 months to prepare and came with one of the greatest outcomes during the Civil Rights Movement. It was successful in pressuring the administration of John F. Kennedy to initiate a strong federal civil rights bill in the Congress. The march consisted of tons of different musical performers and speakers, but honestly, the citizens who attended is what made the march such a success. The NPS stated how veterans of the Civil Rights Movement and individuals new to the issue locked arms, clapped, sang, and walked along together. King's Institute mentions that the stated goals of the protest included a comprehensive civil rights bill that would do away with segregated public accommodations, the protection of right to vote, desegregation of all public schools, a massive federal works program to train and place unemployed workers, and a federal Fair Employment Practice Act barring discrimination of all employment. Obviously, I wasn't there to experience the march firsthand, but after doing a ton of research and finding out all the effects that came after the march, I realized how big of a triumph this event was. It was honestly just a peaceful protest filled with different performers and citizens coming together to spread awareness for an issue that's been apparent for way too many years. It allowed citizens to speak up for what they believed in that normally don't get to be heard. Infinite Fire stated how one direct outcome from the march was the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The march brought us the iconic I Have a Dream speech made by Martin Luther King Jr., and he was one of the last speakers of the march to close off the event.
Just as I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
And although everyone focused on King's speech as the highlight of the event, it was the march itself that excited our entire nation to finally take action on an issue of racial injustice. And just like what I said towards the beginning of the video, after the march, King and other civil rights leaders met with President Kennedy and Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson at the White House and discussed the need for support of civil rights legislation. Though they were passed after Kennedy's death, the provisions of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Voting Rights Act of 1965 reflect the demands of the march.